Q&A box when we open for questions later in the program. We're honored to welcome Professor Noam Chomsky and grateful for his long service to MIT as a linguist and a cultural critic. I'll now turn it over to our esteemed colleague, Subrata Ghoshroy. Subrata is the organizer of this seminar and will act as moderator. Subrata is a former U.S. Congressional Science Fellow and member of the professional staff of the U.S. House Armed Services Committee. In addition to his position as a research affiliate in MIT's program in Science, Technology, and Society, he's currently a visiting professor at the Tokyo Institute of Technology. On our website, you can find a link to his recent paper on missile defense from the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. Subrata, would you please continue?
Thank you very much, Thea, for the introduction. And so Noam, welcome to MIT once again, where you taught for so many years and also participated in so many other things for social justice. Noam Chomsky, of course, does not need an introduction. It's just that he is the institute professor at MIT, but now for the past couple of years, he's amazingly enough that he's taken up teaching and research and guiding students at the University of Arizona. You can, of course, find more information about Noam on the web. Given that we have lost some time, I wouldn't waste any more time with introducing further Noam Chomsky. Everybody knows him. So I going to go straight to the format of this seminar, and which is that Professor Chomsky and I discussed the format, and we decided it would probably be easier for everybody if we have a sort of an interchange on a number of topics, and then Noam can respond. And if any time Noam, you want to veer off to something I'm missing or something that's not something to be highlighted, please feel free to do so and talk about whatever is in your mind. We are at a critical juncture now in US history, not only because of all these things that are happening with the Supreme Court and with Trump and everybody, but this is a very critical election. So I will have a series of questions on the election, but I will start off, Noam, if it's okay with you, on a question on the COVID-19 pandemic. We all know now the coronavirus is having a second surge. Our first surge in the United States actually never ended. And it is now spreading in states that were critical to Trump's victory: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, in 2016. So my question to you, Noam, is apart from anything else you wanted to say about the coronavirus, do you think that Trump's handling of the coronavirus in the light of people's own experience in his baseland is going to impact this election? Noam?
How's that?
Can you hear me? You were muted. No.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
I suspect the effect will not be very great. Trump has an adoring base who are immune to fact and argument. They worship the leader and don't seem to be swayed by evidence or not just on this issue, but almost any issue. I have to say that it brings up unpleasant memories from my childhood in the early 30s, watching the adoring worship of the maximal leader on the part of fascist hordes. It's not the same, but unfortunately reminiscent. As you saw this morning, the Supreme Court just gave Trump a lift in Wisconsin, denied the request of the governor for more time for mail ballots, given the pandemic. And I think it's very much up for grabs, even if the best estimates are that unless Biden wins by maybe 4 or 5%, he might even lose the Electoral College. If there's not an overwhelming victory, Trump and the Republican Party are geared openly, publicly, to just challenge the election, to find legalistic ways to delay it. We might even get to the point where on January 20th, there are two people claiming to be president, and the military will have to step in, something that has never happened in the history of parliamentary democracy. But that's the situation we're in at this point.
I have another question related to COVID, the pandemic, but also a slightly general question, is that he has attacked science and scientists as regarding climate change science or the science of virology. Do you think that these attacks on the institution, scientists, science will last or will have a lasting impact on the American public opinion, or is this going to be a passing phenomenon?
It's already had an effect on American public opinion. We have to bear in mind that about almost half the population is glued to Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, echo chambers for the government. What they're hearing constantly from the sources they trust and from high officials is that everything is a fraud, everything's fake, science. Rush Limbaugh, science is one of the four corners of deceit, which along with media, academia, and government, the four corners of deceit rely for their survival on deceit. When people have that hammered into their heads day after day, many of them believe it, especially in circumstances like today, when there's all around the world, most of the world, very substantial anger, fear, concern, largely the result of the 40 years of neoliberal assault on the population, greatly magnified by Trump and other demagogues, circumstances in which people are inclined to accept conspiracies, some exotic belief that might make sense of their troubled surroundings. Actually, there's a study that just came out this morning showing around the world the level of belief in basically crazed stories. It's quite astonishing. It appeared in The Guardian this morning. So yes, as far as the pandemic is concerned, we should bear in mind that Trump's hatred of science begins the moment he entered office. Actually, it goes back before. There was a pandemic response system that had been set in motion by Obama on the advice of the Presidential Science Advisory Council. A careful system. First days in office, Trump dismantled it totally, terminated the programs of US scientists working with Chinese colleagues on identifying coronaviruses, defunded the Center for Disease Control, continued every year he was in office, even last February. The contempt for science on the pandemic is one of the factors that has led to the huge death rate. Pretty soon it'll probably reach 300,000. The United States is almost in a class by itself, but the same is true on the much more severe problem of global warming and other issues on which scientific knowledge is crucial. And as far as the pandemic is concerned, we can be pretty confident that if this one will be ended with terrible cost, unneeded cost, but others will be coming. And unless we prepare and pay attention to the scientific information and advice, there'll be worse ones coming down the road.
Trump, of course, calls this virus a Chinese virus. Biden hasn't strongly opposed that characterization. On the other hand, we had a seminar a couple of weeks ago with Professor Jonathan King and Dr. Monica Zappe from Milan about the biosafety labs and their safeties and the possibility that a virus could actually leak out, and there's a lot of research. Do you have any thoughts on this biosafety labs doing all this high-risk research when their benefits seem to be fairly few?
Well, there are always possible accidents, but the research is highly significant. If in 2003, scientists, after the SARS epidemic was contained, there was plenty of information in the scientific community about what should be done to prepare for another coronavirus. It was expected. There's a lot of research that has to be done on the nature of the organisms, on the kind of preparations that have to be done so that vaccines can rapidly be developed on the basis of scientific knowledge when they come along. Almost none of that was done. Drug companies refused to do anything, no profit. The government was out of it because of neoliberal rules. The government can't do anything. Obama, as I said, did convene the Presidential Science Advisory Council. They did put in place a kind of a fairly decent response system, didn't do the research, but Trump dismantled it. And we're in the same situation now. So far, we've been kind of lucky. There have been coronaviruses that are highly lethal, but not very contagious, like Ebola, and are very contagious, but not very lethal, like COVID-19. But who's to say that the next one won't be both highly lethal and highly contagious? If we don't prepare for it, we're in serious trouble.
Thank you, Noam. So you had, of course, in your beginning alluded to this, breaking news about the Supreme Court. So now we have a solid conservative majority in the Supreme Court, 6-3. And the lower courts have been packed by Bush and then Trump appointees. So the appellate courts are full of these conservative judges from the Christian right and other tendencies. So there is this discussion, or not discussion, even Trump's alluding to the Democrats' plan to so-called pack the courts if they are elected. What are your thoughts about the situation with our courts, and what are the recourses?
Well, the Republicans have long understood that they're basically a minority party, and they can only survive in the political system by various kinds of machinations and trickery. And especially McConnell has turned the Senate into, which used to be a deliberative body, into an organization that does nothing except pass legislation to benefit the super rich and pack the courts. It's a understandable program. Since we cannot win in the electoral arena, let us stack the courts with young ultra-right judges who will be able to maintain our deeply reactionary policies for a generation or more, independently of what the public wants. The idea that judges draw their conclusions on the basis of law has become almost a total farce. You can predict the outcome of a decision on the basis of the political commitments of the judge. Coney Barrett, it's not just, I wouldn't call her conservative, deeply reactionary, and amazingly opposed to science. I'm sure you heard at her confirmation hearing,
Yes.
she was asked what she thought about global warming. And she said, well, I can't have an opinion. I'm not a scientist. That's outlandish. You don't have to be a scientist to understand that the world is heating, that it's a severe threat, and that if we don't do something about it soon, organized human society won't survive. You just have to be literate to know that. And somebody who says, I don't know, is telling us, in effect, that I listen to my pastor. And if my pastor says maybe it's not happening, then it's not happening. For that to be on the Supreme Court is shocking beyond words.
So in what I read somewhere recently, a Smithsonian article, which was excellent in terms of the description of the Roosevelt campaign in 1936, which he won by a landslide. And there he faced a very similar situation of a conservative court. And he tried to also apparently have a legislation to expand the Supreme Court, which is what Trump is talking about, the packing. And do you have any opinion about that election and how Roosevelt actually failed to do so, but the Supreme Court later on went along because of public pressure to validate all the New Deal legislation?
Well, in 1936, what happened is Roosevelt threatened to add justices to the court, and the court got the message and backed off of its efforts to kill every New Deal legislation. They began at that point to accept the New Deal proposals because of the threat of court packing. I don't think that would happen this time. We're in a different situation. The right wing is far more rabid and extreme than they were in 1936. And part of the reason is they know essentially that they're finished. The country is moving in another direction. They can't hang on for long. Their fate, the fate of the deeply reactionary currents in American policy, rely on various machinations to avoid coming to the public for a judgment on election day. So they have to avoid it. And I think they'd be much more rigorous this time in trying any tactic to delay the threat of their essentially disappearing as a major political force. That's what's at stake. Actually,
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the testimony, or no, not testimony, but the statements made by Senator Whitehouse about the tremendous organization of right-wing forces financed by the Koch brothers and the Bradley Foundation and so forth, in systematically organizing to support people like Amy Coney Barrett and other justices like Justice Kavanaugh and so forth, and in the lower courts, that they really took a very organized approach to packing the court. On the other hand, I don't think the Democrats highlighted or are focused on this issue that is going to last with us for a long time.
Well, first of all, remember that the Democrats, the official Democratic policy is moderately cooperative with these policies. They don't actually support them, but they don't strongly oppose them. The Clintonite Democrats, who basically run the party, are also beholden to similar interests. They're a Wall Street-based conservative party. If you look at international comparisons. There was just a recent one done by a major institution in Sweden. There have been several others. The Republicans today are ranked alongside of the far-right parties in Europe with neo-fascist origins. And the Democrats are basically a centrist party by European standards, not a social democratic party. So they've been pushed to the left by popular pressures. Their voting base is shifting, but the DNC itself is resisting. You can see it very clearly on the climate policies. Biden and Harris were pressed by popular activism to move towards a fairly decent climate program, not sufficient, but more reasonable than any other that's been around. The DNC has tried to kill it. It's tried to push it back. And there's a battle inside the Democratic Party on that. The same on other things. There is a chance that Roberts, who knows that the court is going to be called the Roberts Court, won't want to see it totally discredited. He's shown signs of trying to make it look as if it's a functioning court on issues that are not of primary concern to his major constituency, the corporate sector, extreme wealth. And he might try to somehow moderate the court to make it not look like just a comic strip, which it's becoming. But I think the chances are pretty poor. I think we should remember that the United States is, even apart from Trump, the United States is facing a constitutional crisis, serious constitutional crisis. If in the 18th century, the US Constitution was a moderately progressive document, even though it was strongly opposed to democracy. That was open, no secret about it. But by the standards of the 18th century, it was a step forward. By the standards of the 20th century, it's highly regressive. If the United States were to try to enter the European Union, it would probably be turned down by the European Court of Justice for obvious reasons. I mean, take the Senate. Wyoming has 600,000 people, 2 senators. California has 40 million people, 2 senators. This affects the Electoral College. It's so radically undemocratic that a modern democracy would not tolerate it. The same is true of what you mentioned, the enormous power of private wealth. So take global warming again, and just take a look at what happened. A decade ago, 2008, John McCain ran for president on the Republican ticket, and he had a limited but actual global warming element in his platform. The Republican Senate was beginning to move towards limited actions on global warming. The Koch network, which had been pouring money into preventing the Republicans from moving away from total denialism, went practically berserk. Late David Koch, launched a huge campaign to intimidate senators, to threatening to run candidates against them, bribing them, a huge lobbying campaign, AstroTurf campaigns. They turned. The entire Republican leadership, most of the party, just followed the orders and withdrew from their very limited efforts on climate change. Now they're a denialist party. It's remarkable. You take a look at the 2016 primary, the last Republican primary. Every candidate either denied that global warming is taking place or said maybe it is, but it doesn't matter. The most forthcoming of them, the one who was praised as being The adult in the room, John Kasich, governor of Ohio, considered so moderate he was even invited to talk at the 2020 Democratic Convention. He was praised because he was the one person there who said, yes, global warming is taking place. But then he added, yes, it's taking place, but we in Ohio are going to use our coal resources and not apologize for it. He was the worst of all of them. He said, yes, we're racing to disaster, and we don't care because we're going to go faster. And it's not even the jobs are at stake. That's a joke. There's a careful analysis of the Ohio situation by Robert Powell, economist who's been working on this for years. He's found that about 1,000 jobs a year are at stake in Ohio. It's nothing. There are many more jobs and better jobs available in renewable energy. This is a matter of preserving the most destructive enterprises in world history, in fact, the ones who are bent on getting the last cent of profit that they can before the fossil industries collapse, as they must.
Yeah, we just had a very good talk by Heidi Peltier just last week from Boston University. She's a PhD in economics from the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, where Bob Pollin teaches, and she had a very good analysis of this impact on jobs, with spending on Green Deal versus all this military spending. Another thing, Noam, is not talked about is this $740 billion defense spending when we don't have money to support our workers' unemployment and healthcare and so forth. The US elections, on this regard, Noam, I was going to ask you a few questions, but you're already touching on some of them, of course. You had mentioned in your talks that this is really a historic election, and other people have said similarly. Now, Trump's transgressions are very transparent. Everybody can see that. But do you see it's a fundamentally a different sort of choice we face, despite the fact that the DNC, et cetera, are still very much beholden to the same kinds of interests?
Sorry, I didn't catch it exactly. Could you say it again?
Oh, I was asking you that you have characterized this election as an historic election, but then you also mentioned about the problems with the DNC and the kinds of interests they are beholden to. For a lot of people, Biden was, of course, not their first choice or the second choice, but we have Biden now against Trump, and so can you clarify the historic nature of this election in your thoughts?
It's the most important election that has ever taken place. If Trump is reelected, the chances of human survival in any organized form sharply reduced. 4 more years of Trump's assault against the environment might lead us to irreversible tipping points. At the very least, they will make it considerably more difficult to address the severe crisis of environmental catastrophe within the limited time that's available to us. We have the means to deal with it. They're not out of sight. It's feasible, but not a lot of time, maybe 10 or 20 years. Cut off another 4 years from that and race in the wrong direction makes it much harder. It might be almost a lethal blow, and it's not alone. Trump is tearing to shreds the remnants of the arms control regime, which has offered some limited, mitigated to some extent the threat of nuclear destruction, carrying out highly provocative acts which increase the threat of war, racing to develop new, more destructive weapons. This is as severe as the climate crisis. And He's racing in that direction. Quite apart from that, American democracy is being dismantled. The executive branch has been purged of any dissenting voice. When inspector generals began to investigate the swamp of corruption he's created, he just fired them. The latest move is to say he may not leave office. In the offing is a plan to dismantle the civil service, the backbone of the functioning country, to dismantle it, replace it by sycophants, his own sycophant. This is saying, let's destroy the system. So put it all together, racing to the abyss on global warming, dismantling arms control, increasing the threat of nuclear war, which is very serious, tearing to shreds the remnants of American democracy. I won't even talk about the pandemic. This is a crisis of major proportions.
Do you think that some of the foundation for this situation was laid by primarily during the Bush administration after the 9/11 attacks, and that the Patriot Act, the warrantless wiretapping, the no-fly lists, and attacks on academics on campuses for their speaking out, and of course the xenophobic creation of an atmosphere against the Muslims and so forth, that and you had mentioned, so I was thinking that sort of, I was there, people were afraid, and then Obama years, you had mentioned your interview with Aaron Mate, the gray zone, that I think, to paraphrase, that the Obama was a disappointment, and so then came Trump, and we have this situation.
Well, Obama was more than a disappointment. He was a betrayal. Many working people who voted for Trump, for Obama, believing his nice rhetoric, were quickly betrayed. Quickly. It was so fast that by 2010, 2 years, as you remember, in Massachusetts, the election to replace Kennedy went to Republican. Even union voters backed away from Obama. He had betrayed them clearly with the bailout. Congress, remember, had passed legislation for the bailout after the financial crisis. Had two parts. One part was to pay off the perpetrators of the crisis, the banks with their predatory lending practices, so yes, pay them off. But the other part was support the victims, the people who had lost their homes with foreclosures and so on, the victims of this. That was canned. They didn't do anything about it. And people could see that this is a total betrayal, and it continued on other things. But actually, the problem goes way beyond Obama. We have been living through 40 years of a neoliberal assault that was designed so it would harm the general population. Absolutely. It was clear and explicit. Just look at the beginning of it. Ronald Reagan, government is the problem. Decisions have to be taken out of the hands of government. They don't disappear. They go somewhere else. Where do they go? Unaccountable, private, corporate bodies. That's where decisions shift. Then comes the guru, Milton Friedman, with a major article right at the time saying corporations' sole responsibility is to enrich themselves. They have no commitment to the workforce or to the community. So just put these few things together. What prediction do you make? Well, an obvious one, and we see the results. The Rand Corporation just came out with a major study in which they tried to estimate the wealth that had been transferred from the middle class and the working class to the super rich during these 40 years, the lower 90% to what's in fact is the top fraction of 1%. $47 trillion. That's a lot of money. And people understand, they may not know the details, but they can see it in their lives. Wages have stagnated for the majority. CEO salaries have shot to the stratosphere, bringing others with them. The top 0.1% of the population has doubled its share of wealth since Reagan, from 10% to 20%. And for the rest, it's trying to get by from paycheck to paycheck on precarious jobs. So yes, that's the background. Out of that arises extreme malignancy, Trump, extreme malignancy, which